Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule is opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond and you're top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Mo here, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my deck guide for dummies on the new Irelia Azir deck. So, this deck is brand new, a lot of fun, and a lot more complicated than people think it is. A lot of people have this idea of like, oh, it's brain dead. You just like play your units, you play your Deus, and you just go swing, 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 swing. And that's really not true. At a very base level, it can be played that way, and you can probably win more than you lose if you're in like lower elos. But once you start getting up to the higher ranks, and you know the like platinum, diamond, masters, top 100s, you have to play the deck a very specific style versus every single matchup. Every matchup, there is a very specific way you have to play, and that's what this deck guide is here for. This isn't just going to be a very generalized, like, oh, this is the curve you want. You want to play unit, and then Deus, and then champion, and then attack, and then you want a spell, and then you want this. Like, this guide is going to go into each matchup. This might be longer than normal, but it's going to go into each major matchup right now and tell you exactly how you're supposed to play around it. I'll have timestamps in the video, and it'll tell you exactly how to play around each matchup and how you're going to win that matchup. Every matchup so far for me has been winnable. Not just winnable, but has been like even to I'm winning more than I lose, except for Nasus Thresh, and that's really, really good. If you can have a winnable matchup, if you like a winning stat line against every deck except for Nasus Thresh, then you feel really, really good. So in my opinion, I think this deck is super, super duper strong. This deck I've been one-tricking in ranked right now. I think I'm like top 16 at the moment. Yeah, I'm ranked 15. So this deck has been super strong. I filled it out. I'm going to be playing it in tournaments as much as I possibly can. I don't know exactly what tournament lineup I'll be running with it, but get back to the topic of how to play this deck correctly. So we're going to jump in. This deck guide's going to cover why each card is in the deck, because I know everyone has their own different build, so I'm just going to go over why the cards are in here. This is a build that originally started by Yost with the Most, and then I basically took that build and changed it, and he's since then changed his build to match it almost card for card, if not card for card. So we've kind of worked together to build this deck, and he's was the first person I believe to hit top 5 with the deck. I think he hit rank 2 using it, so so I'm going to go over why each card is in the deck, and then I'm going to go over each matchup. I'm just not going to go over a general curve because your curve is very simple of play a 1-drop, play a Deus, play, a champion on 3. So there's no reason to talk about curves like that. Instead, I'm just going to go directly into the different matchups and then tell you how you are going to win each matchup and how to play it. So before we get into the video, I wanted to remind you guys that 86% of the people that watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to me. So if you guys could do me a huge favor and click the subscribe button and leave a comment on the video, that helps me out so much with the YouTube algorithm. And that's going to be it for this intro, so let's get into the video. Alright, so the first part of this video is going to be going over why each card is in the deck, why there's, the numbers there are of each card, and why I didn't play some of the cards that a lot of people are playing. So, we'll start just by going what cards are in the deck, and then I'll talk about the cards that aren't in the deck. So Dancing Droplet is a 3 of. Dancing Droplet's just nice. I mean, it's a 0-mana 1/1 elusive that draws you a card if you bounce it with something like a recall spell and a homecoming and stuff like that. So it's nice. It's a really good anti-Zoe card. There's a reason why a lot of people are playing Shyvana Asol instead of Zoe Asol, even though Zoe is better. Zoe Asol is a strictly better deck than Shyvana Asol. You have to play bad cards in Shyvana Asol. Shyvana is just a worse champion than Zoe. But because you are playing a 0-mana 1/1 elusive, your opponents literally cannot play Zoe because it will never get them value. And Shyvana, at least being a 3/4 body with Fury, is doing more than a Zoe that's sitting there doing absolutely nothing, getting stopped by your 0-mana card. So this card's nuts for that reason. Dune Keeper, it's a nice aggro plan if you ever need to go aggressive in some of these matchups. It summons 2 bodies, which is good for all of your, sparring students, Azirs, Aurelias, your Marshall, stuff like that. Typical aggro card. Shapestone, so I'm playing 3 Shapestone, and I convinced Yost to get onto the 3 Shapestone plan. Shapestone is one of the cards that actually helps you a lot in the mirror match. A lot of people complain about this mirror match, and they say, oh, it's super degenerate and no skill involved. Well, you have to try and find skill, or not skill, you have to try and find small percentage points where you can. Even if it's not much, you have to at least try. And Shapestone is amazing in this deck, even if you don't have Deus. If you know, it's the only landmark I'm playing in this deck. I'm playing 3 landmarks and they're Deus. But that's okay, because whenever you're attacking with a bunch of 1/1s, whether that's Blade Dance or their Sand Soldiers, your opponent has to block. And your opponent is probably going to try and get the most value blocks possible. Meaning, if they have a Fangs, that's a 3/2, they're more than likely going to block a 1/1 instead of a 2/2, so that way they can reblock again and have that Fangs now gain them 6 life instead of just 3 life. And Shapestone is an amazing counter to that. Your opponent tries to get greedy and do some type of block like that, boom, Shapestone, throws them out of the game. In the mirror match, it's insane because your opponent has to block with their things like their, look at everyone's toughness. Everyone's toughness outside of Azir and Inspiring Marshall is really, really low. Even Irelia's a 3/2. They cannot block with their Irelia on a 1/1 to save 2 points of damage, or the Irelia dies to Shapestone. Even later on down the line, they can't block with their Marshall if you have a 3-power unit and you had a Deus, because now it's trading, right? The Shapestone's killing off their Marshall, which is really good. Same with like Azir. If they go to block a 2/1 with Azir, then there you go. Shapestone, dead. Like, Shapestone is an amazingly cheap combat trick with a, the floor is very whatever. I mean, there's a Demacia spell. This is literally just a power crept Radiant Strike from Demacia. It's 1 mana, give a unit +1/+1 this round. This is 1 mana, give a unit +1/+1 this round with an insane ceiling. The ceiling on this card makes it almost impossible to trade with. This card alone makes your Draven Ezreal matchup good. If you're not playing Shapestone, your Draven Ezreal matchup is unfavored. If you play Shapestone, you're immediately favored. So this card is just all around really, really good to stop you from dying to things like Culling Strike, make your units not die, and then on top of not dying, they're pushing an additional 3 damage from things like, Mystic Shot and stuff like that. So Shapestone is all around just an insane card, and you should be playing 3 Shapestone. You need to be playing 3 Shapestone. This card helps you win out on so many trades that you will otherwise just not win out on, and it just punishes your opponent for being greedy all the time, as well as can just sneak away wins out of nowhere. Sparring Student. Sparring Student is just crazy. You have to play 3 Sparring Student. It's one of the only ways to get an advantage in the mirror match, as well as having a 1 mana 5/5 is just nuts. Not much said there. Deus, because you like to play 6 champions. You like to play 6 Azirs, and that's what Deus is. It's a 2 mana Azir that can't be killed. So it's pretty crazy. It's how you beat all your control matchups. The next card we're going to talk about is Greenglade Duo. So I started realizing that Greenglade Duo, for a while I was on 2 Greenglade Duo and 2 Syncopation, and I started realizing that Greenglade Duo is actually one of the ways you beat a lot of the matchups you're not supposed to beat, i.e. your Dragons matchup. This is how you can sneak wins away from things like Overwhelm, which people think is Overwhelm is favored into this deck. This is how you beat basically any unit-based deck. Greenglade Duo, like, no deck right now has a good way to deal with the loses outside of, like, Sharpsight. So Nasus Thresh is a really good way. It forces them to basically have the Vile Feast, and then, hey, guess what? If you have Shapestone, then their Vile Feast isn't going to do anything. So this card is really, really nuts. So now I'm on 3 Greenglade Duo and 1 Syncopation, and we'll get to the Syncopation in a second. 2 Lead and Follows. So the reason I'm on 2 Lead and Follows, not just like shoving 3 into my deck, is because you're already playing 2 Retreats, and this version is playing 3 Homecoming. So you already have like 7 recall effects. You don't really need the extra lead and follow. And if I were to add an extra recall effect anyways, I would actually do the retreat return, because there are a lot of times where I'd rather do retreat return instead of lead and follow, because the 1 mana flawless duet sometimes is a really awkward. Like, sometimes you're playing against dragons and you don't have your Marshall out, you don't want to cast follow, and at least that way, if you're playing an extra retreat return, then you can use that 1 mana to flash in an Azir, flash in an Irelia, or anything like that. And you're not forced to either waste your mana or just be playing, like, at that point, if you're just going to spend 2 mana on a recall, just play the 1 mana recall spell, It's like, just play this, if that's what all you're going to be using it for. So that's why it was 2. I almost thought about going down to 1, but I feel like then it'd be, like, too shallow. And don't get me wrong, the flawless duet is really nice if you're ahead, but if you're ever not ahead, then the lead and follow feels really bad sometimes. So retreat return, same explanation. I mean, you just need more recalls. This card is really, really good with things like Droplet. You can turn your spell mana into Unimana, which is just absolutely nuts. You go like turn 1 Droplet, turn 2 anything, then you can just go like recall something and play 2/3 drops on like turn 4 because you're cheating out mana that you shouldn't have with spell mana. You get to use 6 unit mana on turn 3 or 4, turn 4 most of the time, and it's just should not be a thing. Like you can the nuttiest thing I've ever done is go turn 1 droplet, and then you can return the droplet, flash in an Azir on turn 2, and then play Irelia on turn 3. And then now it's turn 3, and you have 2 champions out, which you shouldn't have out. So that's a really nice trick you can do with retreat return. That's why you play 2. And that's why you play 3 droplet. So next up, 3 Urban Dancer. Very, standard. Blade Dance is good. So 1 Syncopation. So Syncopation is a really nuts card. And I was on 2 Syncopation for a while. Like I said, I was like this. But the reason I went down to 1 Syncopation was because I didn't really want to draw Syncopation every single game. It was one of those things where it's like, if you draw it, it's usually never bad. It's a really good way to save a card. Like, a lot of times I'll find myself setting up, like, Marshall on 5 with 2 mana, and the best answer for Marshall on 5 is going to be a Thermogen or a Concerted Strike, and then you say, okay, swap my Marshall with the 1-drop, now you're going to die. So because of that, Syncopation is the best, like, 2 mana, save my unit, but I don't have to do something like Retreat or Lead and Follow where I bounce the unit to my hand and have to replay the 5 mana Marshall. Instead, it's just 2 mana, you killed my 1, you spent 7 mana on killing my 1/1, which is really, really funny. And that's a good way to come out with the mana advantage and keep board pressure. As well as, obviously, it has the advantages of you can flash in, like, if you have a really big sparring student or Azir that's blocked, you can just Syncopation, make that unit unblocked. It works really well if you have a leveled Irelia. You can start doing some crazy things with, like, Blade Surge, swapping them around, and then Syncopations. A lot of crazy shit can happen. So, big fan of this card. I want to play 2, but I just don't know what else I would cut. So, if you guys find a way to put 2 in, let me know. 3 Azir, 3 Irelia. I mean, very basic stuff. This deck revolves around these 2. They're pretty crazy. There's just summon dudes, level up, attack with dudes, level up. Blossoming Blades because Blade Dance, nothing else very interesting. 2 Marshall, 3 Homecoming. So a lot of people are on 2 Homecoming, 3 Marshall. 3 Marshall always just felt super duper clunky to me. Like, drawing 2 Marshall is almost always bad. Almost always felt bad to draw 2 Marshall. And the only way you can guarantee that you have a chance in the, like, Slay matchup, the Thresh Nasus matchup, is by homecoming their either Thresh on 5 if you need to, or Nasus on 6 most of the time. And to make those odds higher, I went ahead and threw in 3 homecoming. So 2 Marshall seems to be the standard. A lot of people are on 2 Marshall now, for the reasons of 3 Marshall seems really clunky sometimes, and it just makes your, like, bad hands worse. Whereas, if you open up against something and you open with double Marshall in your hand, you're essentially losing. There's not really much you can do unless they're just a super slow deck. With that being said, Marshall's an insane card, and this card is single-handedly how you win matchups like Dragons and stuff like that. And lets you apply pressure to control decks even easier. But yeah, so 3 Homecoming is strictly in here just for the Nasus Thresh matchup. I mean, you have to be able to bounce Nasus. It's good into any big unit deck like, Overwhelm, and even good into things like, Dragons, where they're trying to challenge your dragon. Anything with challengers, Homecoming is good against, and then Thresh Nasus because they kill you with Nasus. So that's why each card is in the deck. Again, Marshall's in the deck just because it buffs all of your units. So if you're going to be making 5 1/1s a turn, might as well make 5 3/1s a turn. So why not play it? It helps you. Make sure your unit's big enough to where they don't proc Fury. Or if they do block like a Fury unit, then they're actually taking damage. Whereas if you block a 1/1 with Fury, you're not actually taking damage. You're just gaining +1 power. So at least this way, with it being a 3/1, it makes it hard. They can't just sit there and infinitely block with their tough units or their Fury units. So that's why each card's in the deck. So now we're just going to get into each specific matchup. And I'm just going to go off of various tier lists and the matchups that I'm seeing a lot here in Masters and a lot of the serious, like tier 1 to tier 2 decks. I'm not going to go into every single possible deck that you guys can think of. If you do have questions about a very specific niche deck, make sure to go over to my Discord. The links will be in the description, or go find me on Twitch one night that I'm streaming and ask me your question there, or leave it in the comments here in the YouTube video and I'll reply and answer it. But as for the video's sake, so it's not 2 years long and I'm not trying to mention and scour the earth for every single deck possible, I will I'm just going to go over the main tier decks. So that's what we're going to do right now. Alright, so we'll start things off with the Thresh Nasus matchup, since that is in fact the hardest matchup, and that is the matchup that I haven't really mastered yet, or is really the only matchup that I can't make a winning matchup at the moment. So the way you want to play this matchup and go about it is you just have to race them. Like, legitimately just shove your units into theirs. Don't worry about the slay triggers. Like, don't be dumb and give away free slay triggers, but don't actually worry about them getting the slay triggers, because if they have a big Nasus on turn 6 and you don't have Homecoming, you're going to lose anyways. And if you're not pushing damage and they sit there and they can block you until they play their Thresh on 5, Nasus on 6, then you're going to lose anyways. So I've had the most success in this matchup where I kind of open as fast as possible and then just go, okay, I'm just going to shove my units into you, clear your board. You really, really don't want them to level Thresh, so this is another good reason on why you should just shove your units into them, especially on turn 4 if you can, if you're attacking and or blocking. Just, if you're either attacking on turn 4 or if you're open attacking on turn 5, I would open attack almost all the time if you can afford to, just to get them to trade away as many blockers as possible, so that way they don't slam a Thresh down with a full board and you're still going to attack with a bunch of ephemeral 1/1s and stuff like that. Because that's going to be bad news, because then they're basically guaranteed a Nasus, and that's just not good. If they don't have Nasus, this matchup isn't the worst. As soon as they play a Nasus, the matchup gets a little bit harder, and then if they ever play a Nasus or have a Nasus in play and you don't have Homecoming, you're more than likely going to lose every time. So don't worry about them. If they're getting aggressive on you, you can try and block and stem them bleeding. They play a lot of like 3/2s and 3/1s, where you can block those easily with things like your Dune Keepers and your 2/1s of your own. Any 3/1 can get blocked by Azir. So just try and get you really need Azir, because you need to go really wide, because that's what the thing about this deck is they can also go super wide. But a lot of their things have low HP. So like Ravenous Butcher, 2 HP, Bakai Reaper, 2 HP. The only thing with more than 2 HP is the Merciless Hunter is a 4/3, and then the Cursed Keeper is a 4. The Abomination from Cursed Keeper is a 4/3. Outside of that, they can typically only block like 1 to 2 things most each. And if you ever have a leveled up Azir, then they can only block one thing at a time. So that's why Azir is super important, and you want like Azir and Deus. Even though Deus seems kind of slow in a bunch of aggro matchups, you almost always want to keep Deus, because it helps you go really, really wide, and that's what you need. You need to level up Azir really fast, and then you need to be able to go super wide and force them to be able to block and kill your opponent's units whenever they do block the first time. Or, hope you have a Shapestone and get some good trades like that. So the TLDR for the Thresh Nasus matchup is try to just go fast, try to go wide with Azir. You need Azir, and always attack. Keep attacking, clear your opponent's board before they play Thresh, and you need Homecoming. I will literally keep a Homecoming in the mulligan. I will keep a Homecoming in the mulligan even if there's no other playable cards, because you really cannot beat Thresh Nasus if they play Nasus and you don't have Homecoming. The next deck we're going to talk about is Ezreal Draven. So Ezreal Draven is favored matchup for you since you play Shapestone. Without Shapestone, the matchup is not favored, but since you do play Shapestone, you don't have to worry about losing to Culling Strike. It's pretty good for you. I say pretty good, it's probably about 55% for you. So this matchup, Deus is king, Azir is king. Again, going really wide is really good. If you really need Deus, because Deus activates your Shapestone, so if you go like Pass on turn 1, Deus on turn 2, Azir on turn 3 with Shapestone, you're going to look really, really good, because they can no longer Culling Strike your Azir, because Shapestone will give it the +3 attack, put Azir at 4 attack, and you'll be really, really happy. Other than that, you can just go super, super wide. Worst case scenario is they open like turn 2 House Spiders on you, but if they don't have turn 2 House Spiders, you should be okay. Shapestone is super good against cards like Static Shock and Mystic Shot also. So imagine you're attacking with like the 2/1 Elusive Girl, and they just try to like Static Shock that in another unit. Well, all of a sudden you can Shapestone, so you're pushing a 3 additional damage on top of all of the damage the Elusive Girl is already going to do. So all in all, in this matchup, is another matchup where you're just going to try to race them down. Your key cards are going to be Deus, Azir, and go really, really wide. There's no real tricks to this one outside of keeping a Shapestone. Shapestone's super important. The cards you don't really want to see are like Homecoming's pretty useless in this matchup. Marshall isn't the most useful in this matchup, but she's not the worst. Sometimes I will win with like a turn 5 Marshall, and then now they can't block all of your 1/1s over and over again. So that's always something to look out for if you can afford to do that. I'll do that a lot if I have a Syncopation in my hand, so I can like play my Marshall on 5, and then if they go to Thermogen it, you can just swap it out with a 1/1 or something like that, or swap it with something worse, and then you can start getting shit done with these 3/1s you're attacking with. And makes so they're like Sump Dredgers and Ballistic Bots and Dravens and Ezreals don't just get free blocks for days on 1/1s. So Marshall's pretty important, and Azir is important. Deus is super, super important, and not Culling Strike, sorry. The Shapestone is super, super important. The next matchup we're going to talk about is, of course, the Mirror match. So in the Mirror match, there's not really much you can do. outside of have a student. So the mirror match breakers is who has student and then who has more Deus effects. And then after that is just going to be who attacks on odds. So it's, do you have student? Do you have a Deus effect or an Azir effect? And then like a Sand Soldier Maker, and then are you attacking on odds? And if you have all three of those, you should be set to go. And they are important in that order. It's importance of student into Deus into attacking on odds. So other than that, there's not really much you can do. You can keep like a Shapestone to get a cheeky trade, like I was talking about on the reasons you play Shapestone, so that if they do go to block a 1/1 with their Azir or their Irelia or something like that, you can get a nice trade. I've caught people's students because they'll use a student to try and block like a 1/1 because it makes sense. You know, you have a 4/4 student, you should be blocking a 1/1 unit, and then it just get you Shapestone, and then boom, you just traded a Shapestone and a token for the best card in the mirror match. And that's a really good way to come out ahead. So really, the really important cards here is just going to be Sparring Student, either Azir or Deus, and then Shapestone is what I would say are the most important cards. Next up, we'll talk about the Dragons matchup, the Shyvana Aesol matchup. And in this matchup, you really, really need your Elusive 2/1, Azir, and Marshall. If you have Azir, Marshall, like Deus, Azir, Marshall, that combo of cards alone will basically win you the game. You can make this matchup a little bit slower if you have Marshall. It makes it to where their Fury units and their like 3/2s can't just infinitely block you, and that's really, really, really good. And you can take it slow. Don't feed them Shyvana Furies stacks, which means like even if you play like Irelia on 3 and they open with like Shyvana, if they have Shyvana on 4 and you're attacking on 4 and you have like Irelia triggers and stuff, a lot of times I'll actually just pass, or I'll attack with like just Irelia or something like that, because you don't want them to level up Shyvana, because as soon as they level Shyvana, then now they have a single combat every time that they're attacking you. And it's really hard to play around a guaranteed single combat every single turn. You can play around, you know, the 3 singles and like the 1 or 2 concerteds in their deck, but it's hard to play around that on top of a guaranteed single every other turn. It's almost impossible. So a very good thing would be to not feed the Shyvana Slay triggers. Even if it feels bad, a lot of times it's right to just pass and not, you know, attack with 1/1s if it's not doing anything. Of course, if you're at a stage into the game where like their only blocker is Shyvana, and if you attack you're gonna push like 3-4 plus damage with your attack, then of course go for it. But if you're not pushing like an insane amount of damage with these, like if you don't already have a leveled Azir or something like that with 2 Deus effects, then it's not worth it. Basically, you have to think. I'd probably say a good threshold is like 4. If you can deal 4 or more damage, then I would go for the attack. If you can't deal 4 or more damage, I probably wouldn't go for the attack. And you can just slow it down, play Marshall on 5. If they don't have Concerted, then you're golden. And then that's when you want to unload all of your Blade Dancers and all of your Irelia spells and stuff like that. Because then now all of a sudden, instead of just saying, okay, I'm just going to attack you with like 3 1/1s, you're attacking them with 3 4/1s. At that point with like a leveled up Azir and a Marshall and stuff like that. So the biggest card in that matchup is going to be Marshall, Azir, and Shapestone, because Shapestone helps you kill off things like, you know, if you attack with everything and you have a Shapestone and they block with their Shyvana, because it has 4 HP, Shapestone kills it. They're forced into using a combat trick now that they weren't expecting to on this stupid little token, and now they don't have it to use on your like Azir or your Irelia and stuff like that. So Shapestone, Marshall, Azir are the super important ones there. The next matchup we'll talk about is TLC, the Trundle, Lissandra Control Watcher combo deck. And that matchup is very, very easy. You just want as many Deus and Azir effects as possible. If you can open with like triple Deus, just keep it. If you open like, you know, double Deus Azir, as many Deus and Azir effects you have, it's free, because they can't deal with Azir and Deus. They can't deal with Deus at all. And it's really difficult for them to deal with Azir because he has so much health, and this deck just deals damage 1 and 2, you know, damage at a time to units. So it's going to take them a good 3+ turns and like 3+ cards to deal with this Azir. And because of that, you can usually abuse them by going, okay, play Deus, play Azir, and then just like Blade Dance 1 now turns into, instead of being just, I'm going to Blade Dance 1 and deal 1 damage to you, it's I'm going to Blade Dance 1 and deal 5 damage to you. It turns every one of your units into an additional 4 damage minimum if you can have like 2 Deus effects out, which is absolutely crazy. It means that like avalanches don't matter, the Ice Shards like is the best card, but even that doesn't matter because you go Blade Dance you and they're like, oh, I don't want to take this 5 damage, so they're gonna do that, and you're like, okay, well, I haven't even attacked yet, or I have a second Blade Dance unit in my hand. So it's really easy to play on things like that. The only thing you have to look out for is basically just Blighted Ravine on your students and your Aurelias. Outside of that, though, there's not really much to it. They can't really do much to you. You just have to play. The key cards in this matchup that you're going to mulligan for are just going to be Deus and Azir. That's going to be it. Next one's going to be Discard Aggro, Spider Aggro. So these just aggro decks. In general, these like super swarmy aggro decks. You just have to go fast. It's literally a race. It's very degenerate. There's not too much counterplay. You just have to be faster than them. This is where the elusive girls come in really, really, really nice. Spiders have 0 ways to deal with it outside of Noxian Fervor, and Discard Aggro has 0 ways to deal with it outside of Get Excited. So if they're going to trade 3 mana and 2 cards for your 2 mana girl that, you know, that's it. All you spent was 2 mana on her. You're going to be really happy. You're going to come out in card advantage, mana advantage, and a lot of the times they don't have the time to do something like that before it gets crazy, or they aren't going to do it because they're going to say, well, this is a race, so I'm going to have to shoot this Noxian Fervor up at your face, or Get Excited your face, or Get Excited your Irelia or something like that to be even more impactful to win this race. So you can usually abuse them by going like turn 1 student, turn 2 elusive girl, and then like turn 3 go elusive girl Dunekeeper. And then that right there is just an insane amount of damage. That's like 9 elusive damage if you just go... if you play an elusive girl on turn 2, and then turn 3 go elusive girl Dunekeeper, that's that's half their health in elusive damage that they can't deal with on turn 3. Like no spider player, no discard aggro player is going to be fervoring or get exciteding damn 2-1 elusive unit on turn 3. That's just not going to happen. So those are your kings in that matchup. Is just going to be your key cards in these aggro matchups are going to be Dunekeeper. It's a really good offensive card, and it's an insane defensive card. And then outside of that is going to be the elusive girl. Those are the 2 super important cards in those aggro matchups. What else am I missing here? I believe that's all of the like tier 1 decks. Deep, you just want to go fast. There's not really key cards. Any deck that I'm not mentioning, and if you're not really sure how to play it, just go fast. Just try and race them with your like 1-drop, 2-drop champion on turn 3 curve. Your mulligan for this deck is very, very simple. Of course, take into each matchup that I said, you want to mulligan for those specific key cards. Outside of the very specific matchups that I'm mentioning, and any that you guys ask for in the comments or in my Discord or Twitch or anything like that, your typical mulligan is just going to be like student, Deus, and then champion. And that's like just what you want to look for. You just want to look for something like super fast, super degenerate, and Azir is like really, really good. So I'm not going to make a mulligan guide like I did for my previous ones. I'm not going to make a matchup guide in my Discord either because I'm putting it all here for you in this video. So I decided to do a longer video, but give you guys the best information possible. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoy. If you do have any questions about any other matchups that I might have missed or forgotten, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Go join my Discord and go follow me on Twitch, and you can ask me on there too. I stream on Twitch every day except for Friday nights. At 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, somewhere around that Central Standard Time. Make sure to sub here on YouTube so you get notification every time I post a video. That's going to be it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.